Hey guys, Carly and Bill here at the Harrison Truck Center's training facility. And Bill, it's break time.
Literally. We're
Literally.
talking breaks,
Not the typical break
not
time,
not the
but really
break.
break time.
So, so here's what we got going now, Carly. Is we're going to talk a little bit about the drum brake setup
Okay.
and proper brake adjustment checking. Keyword.
Checking.
We're not just going to go and adjust them. That's a bad thing to do because we have auto slacks, which they automatically adjust the brakes up to keep them in a proper adjustment, obviously. So we're going to check brake adjustment, and the proper procedure for doing that is we're going to check free stroke to begin with.
Okay.
So we're going to measure from the back of this canister to the center of this clevis pin. We got
2 1/4.
right at 2 1/4. Sounds good. There is different sizes of brake chambers,
Okay.
depending on application and trucks and so forth. So you always want to check with the workshop manual and see what the specs are for these measurements for your particular brake chamber on your
Because
truck.
it does vary.
It does vary.
Okay.
Yes. So this is a type 24. There's 30, 38s. There's different sizes.
So it's always good just to be sure.
You need to make sure you got your correct spec, because if you're just guessing, you could be doing the wrong thing.
A lot of
So,
problems.
Not good when somebody has a crash, right?
Right. Absolutely.
So to begin with, checking our free stroke, you measured 2 1/4 sitting here at rest. So I'm going to grab my little pry bar here, and I'm just going to pull back on the slack adjuster, and then I'm going to have you remeasure.
Okay.
Okay.
Not quite 3.
So
2
2 3/4-ish.
Yeah.
So
Sounds good.
2 3/4, and we had
2
2
1/4.
1/4. So for this type 24, we're within spec. So we're looking at,
Within the-
around a 1/2 inch
Okay.
spec there. So everything is good here. Now let's say if it was out of spec, if it was 3/4 of an inch, an inch, it was, in other words, it was out of spec, okay? So then we're not just going to go and adjust it up and tell the guy to have a nice day, because most likely it's not going to stay adjusted up and it's going to go out of adjustment again. And again, we don't need no crash and burns, no accidents. So it's not a good day when somebody has an accident.
No.
If it is out of spec, we need to find out why. We need to report to the customer, say, hey, this wheel's good, this one's good, this one's good, but this one's out of spec. We need to investigate, find out why it's out of spec. So some of the reasons it could be out of spec is somebody replaced this slack adjuster somewhere along the line and didn't do it correctly.
Okay.
There could be worn components, the brake shoes, obviously, the drum, S-cams, bushings. So in other words, there's something worn, broken. There's a reason for it being out of adjustment. I can't stress the importance of don't just go and adjust them.
Right. Check.
The National Safety Transportation Board has investigated lots of accidents and so forth. We have service bulletins in our Freightliner system that talks about the importance of not just going and adjusting these. I want everybody to be safe, right?
Yes, absolutely. Okay, so what about this disc brake?
All right, on the disc brakes, being they're a little newer and everything, there's possibly more people that haven't experienced those. We'll talk about those a little bit also.
Okay.
As far as our disc brakes, they do have automatic slack adjuster type situation also. First thing you want to kind of check here is this caliper should move freely on the slides, okay? So you're just going to grab a hold of it and give it the wiggle test. Easier said than done sometimes, but you can see we can move that around. So that's a good sign. If they were frozen on these slide pins, we'd obviously have something rusted or something going on where we'd have to take things apart and investigate a little bit further. So if a person was going to have to do that and you were going to have to pull this caliper off, there are 6 bolts on each side here that are one-time use only. Okay, so if a person does have to remove the caliper, you need to reinstall with new bolts.
So replace those.
Absolutely. And then there is a proper torque sequence for those bolts also.
Okay.
There's been some issues of people improperly torquing them and then causing it to stick and wear out one brake shoe. So you want to make sure you follow the workshop manual and torque them correctly. If you're just going to be pulling this apart and checking your pads and your rotor, it's pretty straightforward. I'll talk about the adjuster here first. As I say, it's an automatic adjusting adjuster. So you remove the rubber cap, and then what there is under that rubber cap is a shear adapter. You can see how there's splines there, and then the hex for your socket. What happens here is if anything with this adjuster is stuck, frozen, not working properly, and I had to exert too much pressure trying to back the brakes off, it would shear these splines or break this cap. So you go to your parts department, you get one more, and you try it again. So if you put that on there, and you try it the second time, and you strip it again, that's when you're done.
That's
you're
it.
going to have
You
to
get
be
2
replacing
tries.
something 2 tries because of the adjuster being froze.
Okay.
So this one here, you hear it click. That's a normal sound. So I'm just backing the brakes off. I'm going to pull that little cap off there. So now you can see here where I can move it a lot more,
Yeah.
being as I backed it off, okay? So what we have here is a clip, a pin, and a retaining plate for the shoes. I'm going to take my needle nose, remove the clip, then I'm going to apply a little downward pressure because these are little spring plates here.
Okay.
So I'm just going to push down, pull that pin out, remove the retaining plate, and then our pads should slide right out. Okay, so the rotor itself is replaceable if need be. You would have to pull the caliper off to do that, but we can inspect it here and see if it's reusable and everything. So this one here is looking pretty smooth. We don't have any big cracks or gouges, no irregular rough surface going on. And again, in the workshop manual, it'll give you some guidance on what's acceptable and what's not.
You can refer to that.
So there is a minimum thickness. So I always just use my dial caliper and go measure my thickness. And I got 1.78,
Yep. That's what it looks like to me.
and I believe our minimum spec was 1.436,
6. Yeah, somewhere around
right in
there.
that area. Okay. So, 1.4 to 1.7, I mean, we're good.
Good.
Absolutely. And we don't have any cracks and everything. So if a person was just inspecting these, the minimum thickness on the pad itself, you've got a steel backing plate plus the brake material. And we're at 1.16.
Yeah, 1.17.
So, I mean, we're good.
Yeah.
Minimum spec is just a little more than what the steel plate is, okay? And trying to remember off the top of my head, I think it was 0.43 or thereabouts was minimum thickness.
And if you're at that point,
So that's not much brake pad left at that point. So if they're worn down that much, you can eyeball them, you don't even need to measure
right,
them, right?
you know.
And generally when you're doing this, for what we're doing now, you're probably doing something like a wheel seal, some other process here other than replacing the brakes. So you're just checking your measurements and stuff at this point to see if everything's in spec.
Sure.
So we reinstall the keeper, and they suggest that you replace the pin and the clip anytime you have it apart. Because, you know, there's going to be a little bit of normal wear on the pin.
Sure. You just
And
press
then
that
the
down.
keeper, you don't want that going anywhere. So that's why they suggest to replace it. You want to stay where you put it, right? So at that point, we're going to adjust them back up. I'm going to stick this back on there. And I'm just going to bring it up to where I'm not overbearing on the ratchet. I'm just putting, you know, good finger pressure on it, good and snug to where it's clamped all the way down. So then I'm going to back it off 2 clicks.
Okay.
And you'll hear it plain as day.
There's 2.
So I'm going to take that off just because if I don't, every time I turn around, it'll drop. And so I can see I got free movement, good sign. And then I'm just going to check my running clearance,
Okay.
which is 22.3 to 42 or 3 thousandths. And I'll grab my feeler gauges here. And what I'm going to do is grab a 24, the first one I came to. Let's try the 24 to begin with. You might have to kind of slide this all the way one direction. But you see that's a, you know, snug fit type of thing there. So we're good.
So we're good.
Absolutely. So now with the initial setup, we're going to put our shear adapter back in there.
Back in there.
And then that rubber cap so it stays in there.
We know that's important to hold that in there.
Yep, otherwise it'll be gone before you get to the end of the driveway. So now at this point, we want to take it on a short road test and come back and maybe check the temperature at each wheel with a temp gun and kind of verify that we've got pretty close equal temperatures, make sure they're all acting accordingly. As far as replacing shoes or pads, whichever it may be, we just did this side here. You should do the opposite wheel
side.
also
To balance each other
to keep
out.
everything balanced. That way you got equal braking pressure. It's not going to pull one side or the other type of a thing. Absolutely. In a nutshell, that's a little bit of the safety and the proper adjustment checking procedures for the drum and the auto slacks. And then that's just a quick rundown on checking our pads and our automatic adjuster for the disc brakes.
And just like that, break time's over.
Let's go back to work.
I know. Well, thank you, Bill, again for all of your time and help today.
No problem.
For parts to complete this job, contact your local Harrison Truck Sitters Parts professional. See you next time.